Hey, all you beautiful ladies out there that are married or that long to be married. We have been reading from Created to Be His Helpmeet. We're going to jump into chapter 11, and you guys, this is probably going to turn into a part 2. But these series take about 200 years to upload, so I'm going to go ahead and try to get part 1 started. All right. The nature of woman and the nature of man. Man was created to subdue, and woman was created to assist. God made them that way. God created man with a nature that is aggressive and then commanded him to exercise dominion over the earth. Genesis 1:28. He created the male sex with an extra dose of testosterone, which provokes him to want to work hard, conquer everything in its path, and subdue all things. That is why the male sex is at the forefront of military conquest, exploration, architecture, science, inventions, etc. No woman would ever go out and tame a wild horse and make a rope out of its mane and tail, then go out and find a bear and lasso it just to prove that she could, and laughing the whole time. If women were the inventors, they would make minivans. Men make four-wheel drive vehicles and then modify them so that they will stand higher and drive faster. They will even put a winch on the front so that they can traverse places meant only for alligators or mountain goats. Men fly to the moon, climb treacherous mountains, fight wild animals, challenge each other at any sport, and laugh with loud, hilarious delight the whole time. They like to play or watch games where they knock each other down just to prove who is the strongest and the toughest. Everything they do must end with a testosterone-driven climax, and they think we ladies are hard to understand. A woman can do about anything that a man can do, but it is always the men who invent it, and then eventually invite the ladies along just to make it more interesting. Testosterone, again. A few ladies will always step out and play the men's games, trying to prove a gender point. The men don't need a point to prove, they just need to vent. Men are different, and we must face it. Thankfully, men and women were not created alike. Men were created with traits that I do not want as a part of me. Me neither. But when I married, it was, of course, to one of those strange male creatures with those traits. When we ladies discover traits in a man like sensitivity, spirituality, and understanding, we are thrilled because they contrast so starkly with the many coarser invisible traits that so strongly drive his nature. After all, having a nature to subdue all things, he likes best a woman who will give him a token struggle and then surrender to his wit, his charm, and his strength. He must thoroughly conquer. It is a battle I always enjoy losing. I'd like to be conquered and consumed by my man. That is in my creative nature. The woman was deceived. When Adam was created and placed in the garden, Lucifer, the fallen cherub, was jealous of Adam's position as master of the renewed planet. Lucifer, having become the devil, had previously made himself the enemy of God and his program. He did not want God to be successful at replenishing the earth. From the very beginning, it was in the devil's dark heart to lure Adam into disobeying his creator. Satan would make Adam into the same rebel that he himself had been for such a long time. But Satan did not approach Adam. He waited and he watched. When God finished with Adam, he gave him the job of naming all the animals. He commanded the first man not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and he told him to subdue the earth and have dominion over the animal kingdom. His principal job was to dress and keep the garden. Genesis 2:15. So even before Eve was created, Adam was a full-grown man, firmly rooted in his relationship with God and fully engaged in his life's work. Adam was alone as he attended to his vocation and obeyed the command of his Creator. In going about the task of fulfilling his duties, he became aware of a need that he could not define. Even though he observed it in the male and female behavior of the animals, he was lonely. He had no one with whom to share his achievements and his conquests. God, in watching Adam, said, "It is not good that the man should be alone, and I will make and help me for him." Genesis 2:18. God put Adam to sleep and took a rib from his side to make of it a woman, to be his helper and to meet his needs. Satan could have tempted this lonely man at any time, for he had no knowledge of good and evil. But Satan waited. He waited for the creation of the weaker vessel. For Adam was first formed, then Eve, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. 1 Timothy 2:13-14. Satan knew that the man could not be deceived, but the woman could. So when she drew near to the tree, he convinced her that life would be better if she sought the higher state of being, like the gods, gaining spiritual insight into the nature of good and evil. Eve was deceived in 3 ways. 1, she followed her flesh in desiring the tree for its food properties. 2, she succumbed to its beauty, desiring it for its pleasant appearance. She did not follow logic, she followed her sensibilities. 3, she wanted deeper spiritual insights than those provided by God. The source of Eve's failure was her unwillingness to believe God and in her husband. She was meant to be Adam's helper, but she helped herself to spiritual knowledge and acted independently, becoming his downfall instead of his helpmate. Why did Satan avoid Adam and approach Eve with his offer of greater spirituality? Lucifer is a male being, Isaiah 14:12-20. He understands the natural resistance of the male. He knows males say no just to prove that they are in command. But Lucifer could see that this soft, sweet female was vulnerable. God had made her by nature to be responsive, and she was trusting and naive. Being willing to rationalize, she could be deceived, having the best of intentions. In my mind, I picture the man being created heavily armored. His armor is helpful both spiritually and physically. God loaded him down with resistances, giving him a nature that is doubting, skeptical, forceful, and pushy. God knew that in order for man to survive and even prosper, that he would need a natural armor that would drive him to keep pushing against the odds while enjoying the challenge. God knew that Satan was a liar and the master of deceit, so he created man to question first and believe later. Man's objectivity and lack of intuitiveness make him appear less spiritual than the sensitive, believing female. As a general rule, man is ruled more by his mind than the female, who is governed more by her sensibilities. Picture God as deliberately creating the woman without this armor, because he intended for her to stand behind her husband's armor. He was to be her covering, her shield, and her protector. Satan was able to deceive her whenever she left Adam's side and confronted the devil's logic alone. She didn't have the armor to ward off his fiery darts of deceit. God designed the woman to be sensitive and vulnerable for the sake of the little one whom she must nurture. The soul of a mother had to be vulnerable, the outer shell thin. She must be quick to feel, to hurt, to love, to have compassion, to take in the broken,
Mama,
and to believe the best.
You have to go get Soul because he's too late.
He's fine. I'll be with you in just a few minutes, okay? Go play.
But he's not here though.
Okay. It's okay. Vulnerability is a woman's greatest natural asset and the point of her greatest weakness. A woman can become tough and hard, skeptical and cautious in relationships, just like a man. She can become guarded and cynical, but in doing so, she is no longer feminine, no longer attractive to a man, and she will even begin to not like herself. Unprotected by the covering of her husband, she will grow miserable, fighting her own battles and trying to survive on an equal footing with men. Just look at the faces and mannerisms of outspoken feminists and lesbians. In their attempt to shed their vulnerability and express their independence, feminists begin to exhibit traits and behaviors completely outside of their created feminine nature. They lose their beauty and their charm and become very poor excuses of men. Beautiful, deceived dreamers. Women in general give the appearance of being more spiritual than men. They like to dabble in soulish thoughts. There are many ways of expressing spirituality, but most of them have nothing to do with the Spirit of Jesus Christ. We ladies are more inclined to trust in our feelings and intuition than our men, which makes us more subject to deception, just like Sister Eve. Feelings and intuition are ever changing. The Word of God is objective and dogmatic, unchanging. It is to religion what hard facts are to science. You rarely hear a man say, God told me to do this, or God led me to go down there. The few men I have known who talked that way did not demonstrate that they were any more led by the Spirit than other Christian men. I know that when God does speak to my husband and leads him in a supernatural way, he will not speak of it in public. He doesn't feel the need to promote himself in that manner, and furthermore, he believes that if he has truly heard from heaven, God doesn't need his publicity. God will vindicate himself. But many Christian women habitually attribute nearly every event to divine guidance. Experience proves that women are prone to claim God as their authority, when God had nothing at all to do with their leading. It is really quite appalling to see this shameful behavior still in action today, especially when God so graciously gave us the example of Miriam, Moses' sister. Her desire to be on an equal footing with Moses has left her name in infamy for our admonition. 1 Corinthians 10:6-10. And for our learning that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. Romans 15:4. God seems to be gracious to us, dimwits, and that is what we are when we lightly use God's name, a form of blasphemy, to give authority to our intuitive decisions. The bottom line is that women enjoy their own self-effusing spirituality. It is a feminine trait that few men share or understand. Men can, however, become totally absorbed in their own personal ambitions and in the process neglect their spiritual side altogether. Women often see this carnality in men, and assume that women being more spiritually minded are closer to God, and a completely false assumption. Nearly all spiritualists, past and present, are women. Women are the palm readers, crystal ball gazers, fortune tellers, and tarot card readers. Witches' covens are headed by women. Most mediums, those contacting the dead, are women, as was the witch of Endor, whom King Saul consulted concerning long-dead Samuel. When Jesus spoke a parable about the kingdom becoming corrupted with false doctrine, he illustrated it with a woman bringing in the corruption. Matthew 13:33. In the book of Revelation, it is a woman, typically called Jezebel, who deceives the church. We are told that she did it through her teaching. John wrote to the church of Thyatira and warned them against allowing that woman Jezebel to teach. Revelations 2:20. Women are either directly or indirectly responsible most of the past and present cults in Christianity. The Bible makes a point of revealing the inherent nature of women when it gives a reason why women should not teach men. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. 1 Timothy 2:14. That a man is less sensitive than a woman does not make him inferior to her, nor does her being more subject to deception than her husband make her inferior to him, just different natures. It is in recognizing that difference that wives should fear God and distrust their natural tendencies. Things that are not the same have different capacities and different offices. Okay, we're going to keep going. 15 minutes. Adam knew. God had instructed Adam, and Adam had instructed Eve. Adam clearly understood that Satan's promise of spiritual enlightenment was a diabolical lie against God. The nature armor God had given Adam granted him enough understanding to doubt the devil and resist his lies. But Adam's armor had one small weak spot. He was not ruled by his feelings except where it concerned his woman. Adam's soul was exposed and vulnerable to the woman that he loved. He wanted her happy, even if it meant disobeying God or going against his natural understanding of truth. He was willing to set aside the reason for his woman. Eve's influence over Adam changed the course of history. We need to be aware of the power that we have to seduce our husbands into following us into disregarding the clear, objective words of God. Adam, the first man, Samson, the strongest man, Solomon, the wisest man, and even David, the man listed as being after God's own heart, were all brought down by the women that they loved. When a man loves a woman and wants to make her happy, he will often I don't even know what that word is, y'all, in spiritual matters because of the affection that he holds for her in his heart. Your husband may set aside reason and good judgment if you pressure him and let him feel your displeasure and unhappiness. In a man's heart, the place a woman holds will lead him into great strength or great weakness, depending on the woman and the man. It is there that men rise to great glory with their women, or they are dragged into shame and disgrace by them, or worse yet, are left unused by God. Remember the crazy lady who drove her family to financial ruin because she felt that God led her to move and change her husband's business? Her husband knew that it would not work, but he could not stand against her constant pleading and her spiritual intensity. He wanted desperately to be the man of God that she wanted him to be. But in doing so, he gave up the glory of the man that God expected him to be. Then she badgered him into giving what little that they had left as a tithe in hopes that it would move God to bless their lack of effort with unearned wealth. What foolish rebellion, all in the name of spirituality. In the end, they lost everything and she lost her mind. Men are still allowing women to take the spiritual lead, and women are confidently leading just as Eve did. They believe they are doing what is good for the family. It is not an act of carnal lust. It is a religious act driven by rebellion. Women are simply deceived. This is why God has so carefully taught us ladies to observe and maintain our roles as helpmates. It is why we must implicitly trust God's judgments as to our duties regardless of how we feel. God gave us a careful and stern warning as to what women would become in the last days. The prophetic picture of this woman is now in full array. It is the spiritual Jezebel, who is the exact opposite of a helpmate. That is the death knell of the most noble institution on earth, the family. As you read the next section about the prophetess Jezebel, learn to hate all that she is so that you will not fall victim to her wicked practices of her deceit. Okay, yeah. And then y'all, we're going to go in next on the Jezebel profile. I'm like right at 20 minutes, so I'm going to call it a pause. And we will pick up in part 2 on chapter 11, and then we still have about a good 6 pages or so to continue in chapter 11. And you guys, I'm sorry if I stumble over words, if I don't say them perfectly. If you need to comment and ask me how it's spelled, or like what it means, then I will be great. I would not mind looking it up in the dictionary and giving you the meaning. Sorry, y'all. I'm not perfect. This is something that I'm doing just because I feel like it can help so many of you gals out there. So, I will see you next time with chapter 11, part 2. Bye.